talking about it. But first, a day after new poll shows Trump leading Biden in 5 key states, a new poll out today suggests Latino voters may hold the key to President Biden's re-election hopes. You're watching Getting Answers. I'm Kristen Z. Thanks for joining us. Even as Donald Trump sits through a day of damning testimony from his former fixer Michael Cohen in his hush money trial, he is taking comfort in a New York Times Siena College poll that came out yesterday. It shows Trump leading Biden in 5 out of 6 battleground states. While Biden leads in Wisconsin, he's trailing the likely Republican nominee in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, and Nevada. The margin is wide, especially in Nevada, where it's 50% for Trump and 38% for Biden. But there's another poll just out today that gives Biden some positive signs and a potential group to focus on for the election. Joining us live now is Christian Arana, Vice President of Civic Power and Policy at the Latino Community Foundation, a nonprofit based in San Francisco. Hey, Christian, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kristen. Good to see you again.
Well, we have so much to talk about. If yesterday's poll was bad news for Biden, yours offers better news for him. Now, before we dive into the findings, tell us about the Latino Community Foundation and why you commissioned a poll of Latino voters.
Yeah, so the Latino Community Foundation is the nation's largest serving foundation in the country. The reason why we commissioned this poll is because we understand that Latinos have an important role to play in this upcoming election. We historically have been a statewide foundation here in California, but for the very first time, we're asking Latino voters about their opinions and their attitudes in places like Arizona and Nevada, because when you look at those states, Latino voters make up a huge block of voters in those states, and they're going to be absolutely consequential in this upcoming presidential election.
So given the growth in population, do you feel like Latino voters could play a pivotal role in deciding this race?
Oh, absolutely. When you look at like the case of Arizona, for example, in the 2020 presidential election, President Biden won by close to 11,000 votes. In Nevada, it was about 33,000 votes. So looking ahead to 2024, every single vote is going to matter. And that's why, I mean, the Latino Community Foundation also recently poured resources into groups in Nevada and Arizona to make sure that people are informed and that they're engaged and that they're motivated to turn out to vote this November.
Right. Okay, let's take a look at some of the poll findings right now. All right. First, which way Latino voters in Arizona, Nevada, and California are leaning? So what do we see here? Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah,
this is the pro-choice candidate one, so I'm going to actually ask that we show the second, because I want to direct first at this conversation about Biden versus Trump in these 3 key states. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So these are rather interesting findings because as you opened up at the very top, the New York Times poll had some kind of mixed, kind of outcomes of what this election might look like come November. But with our poll, we're showing that President Biden still has strong support in the Latino community. So he's plus 20 in Arizona, plus 15 in the state of Nevada. And then obviously in the state of California, the president has always had strong support. In each of these 3 states, well, especially in Arizona and Nevada, about 1 in 4 voters are Latino. In states like California, it's about 1 in 3 voters. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to try to win a state, especially in the sense of the Electoral College, Latino voters are where candidates should be looking to in order to win these states.
How do we reconcile the differences between your poll and the one from the New York Times yesterday? Do you think there are different issues that drive Latino voters in particular in those states?
Yeah. So I think to your point about why our poll may be different from what we saw yesterday, for someone like myself who looks at polling data a lot, the first thing that I always look towards is, well, how many Latinos did they actually sample, right? When you look at some of these more national polls, some of these polls tend to ask about 100 or so. Mm-hmm. Our polls poll quadruple the amount, if not more. So you get a better sample when we conduct polling, especially of this critical voting block. I think it's also important to know Latinos speak English, we speak Spanish. You're able to reach us via online, phone, text messaging even. So the way polls are conducted are especially important to remove that bias and to give a little bit more nuance to some of these findings that we're seeing right now. To your other question about the issues, across the board, across all these 3 states, the cost of living was the #1 issue for Latino voters, which quite frankly is the same issue that any voter in this election is looking at come November.
You know what? It's so interesting, right? Because it's really a lot of bread and butter issues, right? And Latino voters, because of how, what's the opposite of monolithic? Multilithic? It's really hard to like guess and pinpoint and say this is how the whole block will vote, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're first generation, second generation. We're old, we're young. Um, some of us are well off, some of us are not. And so, it's rather interesting in American politics that we're able to dissect voting blocks for other groups, but somehow when it comes to Latino voters, it almost seems impossible for political parties and candidates. And so when you look into our polling data, we do have what is known as crosstabs, where you can break down the numbers across states, across income levels, across gender, which I know is really important in this upcoming election. So before we see these big headlines about where support may be, I do encourage people to look deep into how polls are conducted before we start to make these big headlines that may concern some people.
Yeah, no, I think you're making that really clear, right? And plus, it's not just one big bucket. There's so many little buckets. And the issue of abortion, I think, also illustrates that. And we can go ahead and show what your finding was there in the poll on that issue, which a lot of people may be surprised by, Christian, because I think a lot of Republicans maybe are thinking, well, we'll gain voters here connecting Catholicism, which a lot of Latinos are, right, with anti-choice leanings. But what are you seeing here?
Yeah, so I think this is a big misconception about who Latino voters are. Yes, we're Catholic, but we also hold other religious points of view. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're not also pro-choice, right? And I think the results that you see on the screen is that there is strong support among the community in supporting candidates that do have pro-choice views, right? In the state of California, we tackled this at the ballot box last year. When you look at Nevada and Arizona, these are big topics going into this year, right? And there's huge support across the board in all these three states in terms of Latinos supporting a candidate that does have pro-choice views. And it's so much more than just reproductive health. It's also an economic issue. It's a racial justice issue. So in addition to the cost of living and the economy and jobs, when Latinos are going to the voting booth this November, they're also looking at this issue in terms of who they're ultimately going to vote for and seeing whether or not their candidate is in line with their views.
So given all that you have just told us, I guess, with regard to the Biden and Trump campaigns and how they might want to go about appealing to Latino voters and win those votes and how to better connect, what would you think, the answer is?
Well, I mean, honestly, the answer is you got to get out into the community. I always make the point that how can you ask somebody to vote for someone or something that they've never met? I know campaigns are incredibly expensive, ads are expensive, but the real work starts when you actually talk to community and bring forth the issues that are top of concern for them. As we approach November, I hope any candidate, let alone the presidency, right? Any candidate that wants to win this November needs to do the active effort of actually talking to the community, be in conversation with them, and then figure out how they can best put forth solutions that they think will be beneficial for the community.
Right. And by the way, Latino voters certainly are going to be consequential in not just the presidential race, but also congressional races as well, perhaps determining the control of Congress, all that. So your foundation has invested in boosting Latino civic engagement through grants. What outreach strategies have been most effective in motivating Latino voters to do, and what are you going to be doing for this upcoming election?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's absolutely right. So yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that. So just this past April, we invested $800,000 into 19 organizations across California, Arizona, and Nevada. What's always been the secret sauce to this is making sure that community has conversation amongst themselves, right? Who better than a local nonprofit who has been there for community, especially during COVID times, right? To make the case as to why voter participation is so important. So not only are they doing the door knocking, they're getting out there and having those conversations about why voting in this election is so important. Ads will be ads, right? But ads are 30 seconds and they pass by, right? But investing in these community organizations that the Latino Community Foundation has long done has always been beneficial for the community, but more importantly for our democracy as well.
All right. Well, Christian Arana, Vice President of Civic Power and Policy at the Latino Community Foundation, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Awesome. Get out there and vote.